Hello again, friends. We ended up receiving some DLC for Vintage for Dear Days 2, and with that Vintage DLC, we ended up getting Great Nature in Set 7 with the first set. And the first DLC ended up having a massive bug with how Great Nature functioned. So, for your Great Nature units, it would say something along the lines of when this unit attacks a Vanguard, choose another of your Great Nature rearguards, and you may have that unit get plus 4,000 power until end of turn. That part worked. If you do at the beginning of your end phase retire that unit, that part did not work. It just never retired the unit. So Great Nature ended up getting a massive, I'm going to call it a buff, and that buff ended up making certain cards way stronger and other cards just not work at all. So I wanted to discuss how strong would Great Nature have been if that bug was just how it worked. So starting off with obviously Binoculus Tiger plus Silver Wolf is the first instant combo that you see. If you use Binoculus Tiger, give the power to your Silver Wolf that's boosting it. That is a 21k completely free, no downsides whatsoever row. This makes Binoculus Palamedes on steroids. And in addition to that, he has the ability to take that power and send it over to the side row. So let's say Binoculus Tiger is swinging into an 11k and you have a 7k booster. You wouldn't need to give the power to your 7k booster since you're already 16k. Pass that power over to the other side row. Or let's say that you do have that 17k row, but your opponent is MLB and they're already at 22. Okay, pass that power over to the side row. So it's basically Palamedes, only you can divest the power and send that over to wherever you need it to be. Let's say you have a cross-ridden Vanguard against your attack, and your Vanguard booster is less than 7k. So then you attack with your Vanguard and the booster, but Binoculus Tiger gave the power to the Vanguard booster. Now they have to drop at least 15k shield. They can no longer 2 to pass it with a 10k. So there's a bunch of ways to use Binoculus Tiger. You could use Binoculus Tiger these ways already. The only problem is you just massively neg for doing so. Those negs are just gone, so Binoculus Tiger ends up being a tier SSS++ card and is wildly strong. Likewise, Binoculus Tiger is the exact same way. So Binoculus Tiger is going to basically be Garurubao on steroids this time. So Garurubao is, when it attacks, it gets plus 2,000 power as a 7k grade 1. This is effectively the same thing, only you double that power boost. So this can be used to swing 14k with a 7k boost at a cross ride, and you can choose to make that 18k so that it forces out 10k shield, or you could pass the power over to another side row and have no negative consequences for that whatsoever. And it functions the same way as Binoculus would with respect to that. But then this also can be pulled back and be used as a very respectably statted booster. So this is now a 7k boost with Binoculus Tiger, that's 16k. So you're already hitting those magic numbers against 11ks. Or if you're up against a 20 or a base 10, then this would be able to go up to 20 with the Binoculus row. So all in all, it's just wildly versatile, and without the downside of having to retire the unit at the end of turn, now you can just throw those power boosts wherever you would like them to go, and that's going to make these two units the absolute best units in Great Nature, and among some of the best units in the game. There are a few other units that you could use that would benefit greatly from the power boost. One of those is Canvas Koala. Canvas Koala is if you have all of your rearguard circles full of Great Nature units, then when it hits, you get a draw card for free. And that's not very good because it's 7k base power. But now, if you were able to give it a boost before it swings, it's going to be 11k base power. If it has a boost, it could be 18k if you have a 7k booster. And if you don't want to have it boosted at all, you could have, say, a Tank Mouse, which allows itself to rest to give 4,000 power to a unit. Now that you don't have to worry about the retirement, this is just going to be a static 11k row, and then you swing 11k, attack with your Vanguard, hit a stand trigger, pass the power to the bigger row, and then attack with Canvas Koala for 11 again, and now it's just death by a million cuts, and if any of those tiny cuts hit, then you get a draw card. And then obviously the best case use for giving 4,000 power would be for a 12k attacker, because that's going to make it 16k. If you hit that stand trigger, that's going to restand as 21k. So this plus any 5k boost is 21. Hit a stand trigger and it's 21 again. That is incredible. So Magnet Crocodile is going to be one of the best use cases for it. The problem that we have is that a lot of the bosses are synergistic with the idea of the retirement, and Leopold ends up not having this first effect at all. So the question of what unit would be the best unit to have as Vanguard, I'm not sure that Leopold would be it, but it still does have the on attack, give a unit plus 4,000 power, but it has anti-stand synergy because that has to be done when the Vanguard attacks, and that's going to be after the unit that's already resting that you want to stand has already attacked the first time. So it's not going to get that plus 4,000 power for both swings. So Leopold ends up being a little bit worse, and since Leopold doesn't work on rear guard like Monoculus and Binoculus do, it ends up being a little bit less valuable. But it's still a good card. If I could pick, I would choose to have Lox as my Vanguard, although you can't guarantee Lox as your Vanguard, and that's kind of the part where it gets iffy. Because you can't guarantee Lox as Vanguard, and you don't really want to run the ride chain pieces, you're kind of stuck. But if you're able to have Lox as Vanguard, its Persona Blast is amazing, because that's going to be a power dope that also gives a bonus critical, which also has an immensely greater synergy with those stand triggers. Likewise, he has his own 12k attacker, and 12k attackers are already just amazing use cases for giving the power boosts to. So I would say if I could make Lox my Vanguard every single game, I would do that, but unfortunately you are going to be riding Magnet Crocodile sometimes. So this means that a lot of your grade 3 units just aren't going to be amazing in this particular deck. However, if that bug were to continue into the future, and we did receive Polaris, Polaris is on attack, limit break, counterblast to stand a Great Nature rearguard, and give it 4,000 power. That would have been insane with this buff. So Tank Mouse, I already talked about a little bit. You can use this card to give power wherever you need it to go, and you can either call over him to get another boost, or just let him stay on the board and then not have to worry about negging. If Tank Mouse had the effect of just rest this card, give a unit plus 4,000 power, and that was all it did, that would be nuts. Especially the implication of having this in a Canvas Koala row or a Magnet Crocodile row, and then not having to worry about the fact that, you know, you're basically giving it the stage for both swings, so it's effectively just boosting twice. As far as starters, there's really not a great starter. Top 5 for grade 3 is probably the best starter. Flask Marmoset does work, and it's basically Counterblast 2, give a unit 4,000 power until end of turn. It doesn't have to retire. That's nice, and you can do it multiple times. The downside to Flask Marmoset is that, I mean, that's a lot of Counterblasts, and unfortunately, Great Nature is really good at unflipping damage, but not if things don't die. So we do have cards like Soft Tank Sloth, which is Soul Blast 1 or 2. When it gets retired, you get to unflip 2. And then TikTok Flamingo, which is just choose a unit. When it gets retired, you get to unflip 1. Those are very good units for unflipping, but they just don't work under the Great Nature bug. So TikTok Flamingo ends up being completely worthless. And the big advantage engine, the reason why you want everything to die anyway, would be your Hamskay engine. And there's no space for the Hamskay engine, and there's no way to make it work because it's effectively just now an 8k vanilla. So without the ability to make Hamskay work, then Great Nature kind of fizzles out for trying to get that type of card advantage. So the only outs you have for card advantage are cards like Lamp Camel, which is the 9k on hit Counterblast 2 draw, and Canvas Koala, which would be my recommendation, which would be the 7k on hit draw. And I think overall, this deck would actually do pretty well in the metagame. It would probably be an upper tier 2 deck. The downsides that I see would be that you would have some issues getting over cross rides, but you would have enough ability to compensate for row strength and be able to shift your power around sufficient that if you were really good at doing that, you would be able to hit the magic numbers that you need more regularly and more realistically. But then the downside is you don't have a primary Vanguard that is absolutely synergistic with your strategies, and card advantage is going to be a lot more difficult for you to recover from. So even though you retire your own cards because you're not searching your deck to replace it, because you're not deck thinning for triggers, and because your opponent has more ability to interact with and negatively impact your board, I do think that Great Nature would be a little bit iffier on its consistency, but I think its total overall potency, power would be higher. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.